Okay, so now we're to section 7.4, which again is way harder than 7.3. If you were in 7.3, you may have noticed the shortcut, but that shortcut doesn't work here because now all of a sudden we have a number in front of x squared, which means that now it's going to get more complicated. But if you used the long methods on 7.3, nothing changes. This is exactly the same method. So what we do, we still multiply first times last. So 6x squared times 4 gives us 24x squared. We now make a list of all things that multiply to be 24x squared. So 1x and 24x, 2x and 12x, 3x and 8x, 6x and 4, oops, sorry, that should have been 4x and 6x because I should go numerically. And then 5 doesn't go into 24. Then we go to 6, which is already in our list. So because we did this numerically, we are done with our list. So now we look at the list. What adds to be 11x? So I'm checking 25, 14, and 11. So now we're going to go ahead and we're going to factor by grouping. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to replace this with the 2 that I separated it out to. So now this is 6x squared plus 3x plus 8x plus 4. And then I'm going to take the first 2, I'm going to find my common factor, which is 3x. I'm going to take my last 2, find my common factor, which is 4. And then I factor out that common factor. So 6 divided by 3 is 2x. 3 divided by 3 is 1. Then I'm factoring out the 4. 8 divided by 4 is 2. 4 divided by 4 is 1. Now that these match, I know I'm good, so I factor that out. And what's left behind is my next factor, 3x plus 4. So nothing different about the way we factored this from 7.3. It's just, if we didn't take the time in 7.3 to really learn this method, it makes 7.4 so much harder. Okay, so we're going to move to our next one, and we're going to continue factoring by grouping. So I'm going to go ahead and multiply first and last. So now I have 18x squared. I'm going to find all things that multiply to be 18x squared. So 1x and 18x, 2x and 9x, 3x and 6x. See, 4 doesn't go into 18, and neither does 5, which ends up at 6, which is already in my list. So now which ones of those add to be 11? That would be 2 and 9. So now this becomes 6x squared plus 2x plus 9x plus 3. So again, we're just putting this right here in the middle instead of that 11x. Now we find our common factor for the first 2, our common factor for the last 2. We factor that out, so 2x, and we divide. 6 divided by 2 is 3x. 2x divided by 2x is 1. 9x divided by 3, I forgot to write down my plus 3. Factoring that out, I have to write it down. So 9x divided by 3 is 3x. 3 divided by 3 is 1. Since those match, I factor out that 3x plus 1. Boom, boom. Whatever is left behind is my next factor. So this is our final answer. So we're going to go ahead and move to the next problem. Again, the same process. Multiply first and last. So this will be negative 24x squared. So one of my numbers has to be negative, and I want them to add to be a negative number. So multiply to be negative, add to be negative, which means my bigger number has to be negative. So when I make my list, 1x and negative 24x, 2x and negative 12x, 3x and negative 8x, 4x and negative 6x. 5 doesn't go, and then I end up at 6. So which one of those add to be negative 2? That would be this. So now I rewrite it. 3x squared plus 4x minus 6x minus 8. My common factor here, there's no number, but they both have x's. Common factor here is negative 2. So now I'm going to factor that out, x. And so 3x plus 4. Factor out that negative 2, and I get 3x plus 4, which is good. So I factor out the 3x plus 4. Boom and boom. Whatever is left behind is my next factor, so x minus 2. And there's our answer. So we're going to move down to the next one, and we're going to do the same process. First times last gives me 42x squared. So now I'm going to find all numbers that multiply to be 42x squared. So 1x and 42x, 2x and 21x, 3x and 14x. 4 doesn't go. 5 doesn't go. 6 goes. 6x and 7x. And it looks like we're done because the next number after 6 is 7, and that's already in our list. So now looking at those, which add to be 17x? So that looks like the 3x and 14x. So now we rewrite our equation. So 2x squared plus 3x plus 14x plus 21. Find the common factor of the first ones. Well, there's no number, but they both have x's. Common factor of the last two, 7. So now I'm going to factor out the x. So this becomes 2x. This will become 3. Pull out the 7. So 14 divided by 7 is 2. 21 divided by 7 is 3. And these are common, so now I'm going to factor that out. 2x plus 3. Boom, boom. What's left behind is my next factor, x plus 7. Okay, so our last one for factoring by grouping. Again, same process, multiply first and last. 3x squared times 16 is 48, x squared. And now I make my list. Now because I want my terms to add up to be a negative 16, both my numbers have to be negative. Because negative times negative gives me positive, but negative plus negative gives me negative. So this will have to be a negative 1x, negative 48x, negative 2x, negative 24x, negative 3x, negative 16x, negative 4x, negative 12x, 5 doesn't go, 6 goes, 6x and 8x, and then 7 doesn't go. So which ones of those add to be negative 16? Well, that'd be negative 4 and negative 12. So this becomes 3x squared minus 4x minus 12x plus 16. So common in that is only an x. Common over here is 4. And then because this 12 is negative, I want this to be negative. So this will be x, and I factor that out, so I get a 3x minus 4. I factor out the negative 4. So negative 12 divided by negative 4 is 3x. 16 divided by negative 4 is negative 4. Now that those match, see how I pulled out that negative there, so this ends up positive. So whenever there's a negative here, we're going to make sure this is a negative because we want the first number positive. So the 3x minus 4 is common, so we're going to factor that out. Boom and boom. Whatever's left behind is our second factor, and that's our answer. So our next examples are going to be using the box method for those of you who like the box method. Process is exactly the same at the beginning. We take first and last and we multiply them. So 30x squared. And now some people just make a list. Some people can look at 30x squared and think about, okay, what multiplies to be 30 but adds to be 17? And they can look right away and tell. Some people need to make a list. And it's really up to you. If you know what it is, feel free to go ahead and say, okay, 2 times 15 gives me 30, but 2 plus 15 gives me 17. So that way I know that you understand it has to multiply to be 30, adds to be 17, and now we circle everything so that way I know what to put in the box. So here's my box. I'm going to have 6x squared, positive 5, a 2x, and a 15x, and now we're going to pull out common factors. So both of these can be divided by 3x. Both of these can be divided by nothing, and if it's nothing, we put a positive 1. And then we look up, both of these can be divided by 2x. Both of these can be divided by 5. And then we double check, and that's what I like about the box method. You can double check, and if you don't like it, if it doesn't work out, you just erase a number on the outside and try something else. So 3x times 2x is 6x squared. 3x times 5 is 15x. 1 times 2x is 2x. 1 times 5 is 5. So our answer is the first side times the second side. And again, I like it because it's so much more organized and less messy, so you don't get bogged down in all that writing. But again, whatever works for you, what I really want is for you to be consistent about this. Okay, so next one, multiply first and last. So negative 12n squared. I'm going to use one positive, one negative. I want them to add to be a positive number, so my smaller number is negative 2 and 6. Oh, that's n, not x. 3 and 4. And I want to figure out what's going to give me n. 11n. Oh, it's the first one. So now I'm going to draw my box. 3n squared, negative 4, negative 1n, and positive 12n. And then we find common factors. So across here is negative 1. Across here is n. Up here is n. And up here is 4. And then I double check. Is n times n 3n squared? Okay, it's not. I have to have a 3 somewhere. So, let's see, 3. Okay, I think it's going to go here. So now I'm going to check, and if I'm wrong, I'm going to put it in another spot. So 3n times n is 3n squared. 3n times 12 is 12n. Good. Negative 1 times n is negative 1n. Good. Negative 1 times 4 is negative 4. Good. It all works out. So that means this is 3n minus 1 times n plus 4. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next one. Again, using the box method, so multiply first and last. So we get negative 36x squared. We're going to make our list. We want our answer to add to be positive, so our bigger number is going to be positive. So negative 1x and 36x, negative 2x and 18x, negative 3x and 12x, negative 4x and 9x, negative 6x and 6x. So what adds to be negative 9? Positive 9. Positive 9. There we go. Negative 3 and positive 12. So I draw the box. And we have 2x squared, negative 18. We have a negative 3x and a positive 12x. So now we're just looking for common factors. So across this way, we've got 2x. Across this way, we have negative 3. Up, we have x. And up, we have, I'm not sure. So I'm going to check something. 2x times what would give me 12x? Well, 2x times 6. Okay, so now I'm going to check everything. 2x times x is 2x squared. Good. 2x times 6 is 12x. Good. Negative 3 times x is negative 3x. Negative 3 times 6 is negative 18. So we're good, which means that my first factor is the first side, 2x minus 3. The next factor is the top side, x plus 6. So now on the last problem, I want to talk to you about the guess and check method that the other algebra teachers usually teach because it is something worthwhile and some people really like that idea. And so the way we run the guess and check method is that we look at the factors of 4x squared. So that could be a 1x and a 4x, or that could be a 2x and a 2x. And then we look at the factors of negative 4. So it could be negative 1 and 4, 1 and negative 4, or 2 and negative 2. And so what we do is we figure out combinations that would work to give us the right answer. So I could start with, okay, I think it's going to be this. So I'm going to go a 1x and a 4x. And then I'm going to try any numbers over here that I want. So I'm going to try this one. So I'm going to try a positive 2 and negative 2. And I'm going to check. This gives me 8x. This gives me negative 2x. Do these two together give me the negative 15x? No. So that doesn't work. So I erase. And then I try another set. So now I'm going to go ahead and try backwards. So negative 2 times 2. So this gives me a negative 8x. This gives me a positive 2x, which gives me negative 6x. Still doesn't work. Okay, so now I'm going to try another one. So now I'm going to try, this one didn't work at all, so now I'm going to try this one. So 1 and negative 4. So this gives me 4x. This gives me negative 4x, which does not give me negative 15. So that didn't work. So now I'm going to flip them around. So this negative 4, this is a positive 1, and now we're going to check. So negative 16x, positive 1x. That does add up to give me negative 15x, so this means this is my answer. And that's how guess and check method works. It's really not a bad method. It works really well when you don't have a lot of options. But if you end up with something like a, let's say we had a 15x squared here and a positive 24 here, it's going to be a big pain in the butt because you're going to have a lot of options. You're going to have a 1x and a 15x. You're going to have a 3x and a 5x. And then here you're going to have a 1 and 24. You're going to have a 2 and 12, a 3 and 8, a 4 and 6. And then you have the negatives. And so it's a lot of just different things to try. So 3 methods, all very useful for factoring. You can use whichever you want as long as you're consistent. And you could finish a test in the amount of time that we have. I can't let you test for 6 hours because it takes you so long, because that means that you really don't understand what you're doing. You really don't understand how to multiply. You really don't understand the process. And so not only do you have to be good at doing this, but you have to be fast enough to be able to get it done in a class period. And that's really the idea. Anyone could probably complete something if given enough time. Give them a year, they could probably answer 10 questions from a textbook. But can you answer 10 questions from a textbook in an hour? So is it a reasonable amount of time? Can you get it done correctly in a reasonable amount of time? And that's kind of the problem with this, is we've got to be able to practice it enough that you're going to be good. The last thing I want to talk about is, for this chapter, we have what we call gate quizzes. And a gate quiz means that you have to get everything 100% correct to pass. So either you get 100% or you get a 0. As soon as you get something wrong, it's considered a 0. And that's what a gate quiz is. A gate means you have to get everything correct to be able to pass, or else you get a 0. And so we're going to have a gate on our x squared problems, and then we're going to have a gate on our ax squared problems. So 2 different gates, and guaranteed that if you can't do this, you're not going to pass the chapter test, and you're probably not looking into doing very well in Algebra 2. And Algebra 2 is usually considered what you need to have as a good basis before you go to college, because it's the lowest college algebra class. Everything else is prerequisites, which means you're paying for a class that doesn't count towards your degree, which is not good. So we'll see you in class and talk about more factoring later.